My eyes have to adjust. Is it on? I came down here and I was hoping that coming down here would be like the end of the journey. Like this would be like bringing the closure, but I think it's actually like the beginning of the journey. Like Lola left from here and she like blazed her own trail and like did her own thing, and not everybody was in agreement with what it was, but that's okay. And I don't know. So that's what I was just thinking. Maybe this is like coming here is not like I come here and now it's all tied up neatly. It's like I come here and now things make more sense. Now I can move forward in a direction like I want to move forward in. And I am the great-granddaughter of Lola Perot and the granddaughter of Marion Donnelly, Lola's daughter. When I was growing up, my grandmother told me that her dad was Irish. He was actually from New York, but he met her mother Lola in Louisiana on a work trip. We were French because her mother Lola was French. My grandmother Marion, she was beautiful inside and out, and I just looked up to her so much. When she passed away last year, I realized that there was just a lot about her that I didn't know. I think a lot that she didn't actually know about herself. The one thing that I would like to find out, I think, on this journey is who was Lola and why was she a different person than Louise in New York. You know, my mom was really close to Lola. Like, this was the only grandparent that she knew. She would spend a night there. She would pick her up to go shopping. You know, my mom, like, really had no sense of where her grandmother came from. She didn't know anything about her. She didn't even know her real name and birthday. So it's like, it was really strange to me to have like this like big chunk of family history and knowledge that is just like, where is it? Where is it? Who is this person?
Come save me, Louisiana. Come and take me by the hand. I gave it all I had to see this through, but I won't be coming home to you.
Like, did your mom tell you like what your ethnicity was growing up, or like what do you consider yourself? Like, what were you told as a child?
That we were French and Irish. The neighbors just tell us that my mother was an Indian.
The neighbors told you that?
Right.
And then what did your mom say?
She just didn't start paying attention to what my mother never sat in the sun. She never liked her skin. She never.
Did she have dark skin?
She didn't have dark skin, but she had tan skin.
So she had a natural tan even if she didn't go in the sun?
Right.
Now, why would the neighbors think that she was part Indian?
Because she looked it.
So they just assumed it by her looks?
Right.
Like, what were her looks that would think that?
She had high cheekbones, black hair, and tan skin.
Okay.
So they thought she was an Indian.
Nancy Fink. I am the granddaughter of Lola Perot. I always knew her as Louise White, but she is Lola Perot. When I was young, Graham used to tell me that she was Spanish. I assumed she meant from Spain. Graham was always known for kind of fudging on the facts a little bit. We had an 80th birthday party for her. She was actually like 84. She was born in 1900. Aunt Maggie had gone to Louisiana and found out that Graham had chopped 5 years off of her birth date. I would go to Florida and visit my mother. Uncle Al would always come. And he would tell me that when he was young, he said that when he would go to the store, that the lady at the store would say to him, "You the son of that Indian woman?" And he didn't know what she was talking about. He didn't know there was any Indian in there.
John Francis Clancy, born in Albany, and Lola was my grandmother. The secret of secrets, I guess, you know? Nothing leaked out, period. And I heard Uncle Jack saying that we're part Indian and this and that. And everybody's, well, I don't know. Yeah, we are. No, we're not. Guess what? Did anybody get a DNA test? You bunch of idiots. Nobody did. I said, I'll get a DNA test. From here, Albany. She never mentioned, nobody ever mentioned anything. And I would ask my grandmother, why did they look different in that picture? Never got an answer for that. Get painting. Paint the porch.
Yeah, she didn't want this to come out because I believe the reason why she didn't want this to come out and wouldn't say anything, you know, loose lips sink ships. I really like to know. I mean, I know a lot that I feel in my heart, you know what I'm saying? In my mind and in my heart. You know?
I'm Kathleen Mattar. I live in Buffalo, New York, and I am Lola's granddaughter. She had a great laugh, kind of a real raucous laugh. And of course, her speech pattern, if you closed your eyes, you would think you were talking to an African-American woman from the South. I knew her as Louise, you know, but she was a woman of mystery in a lot of ways. You know, it was after the fact that we found out how old she was, lying about her age, gave herself a couple of years, things like that. So it was just an interesting process hearing about a lot of things that surprised us.
My name is Alicia Purdy. I live in Albany, New York, and I am a great-granddaughter of Lola. You're digging up things because they were buried. That's why you have to dig, not because they're easy to find and you just have to open a file somewhere. These things have been buried by people who are probably ashamed of them or traumatized by them, and they just simply grew up in an era where you did not speak of that. And it wasn't until the last 60 years of culture and society that it's been okay to talk about things that hurt you, or that you even had the ability to verbalize the pain that you've walked through or you've carried your entire life. I am curious about the entire journey of my great-grandmother and all of the things that she experienced to bring her to where she was ultimately. It's a bold move to depart from everything that you've ever known, especially in that day and age. Being a woman, it was very difficult, I'm sure. And I'm sure that it was not an easy journey on any level.
My name's Ellen Brignola, and I'm the granddaughter of Lola Perot Donnelly, and her daughter, Marion, was my mother. According to my mother, she told me that we were French and Irish. And she had Irish because her father was Irish, and he was a white Irishman that had come to Louisiana for work, and that's where they met. And then they got married, and then they went back to New York where he was from. And that the French part was that Graham was French from Louisiana. My mother never said anything about any type of Indian heritage or Mexican heritage. And it's possible that my mother really didn't know. Maybe Graham never told her to kind of protect her or something. I don't know.
Smith, grew up in Western Road, Louisiana. And I knew I had family from there, but I didn't know that much about it until I started digging into it. It's the second oldest city in the United States and the oldest in the state. And so I knew it was a lot, but I didn't realize how much race mixing and all that thing that went on until I started digging into the family stuff.
You know, I was always close to my family, and I knew that side of my family was diverse. And so I was always curious, but nobody knew anything. And, you know, after I dug into it, I found out why, because it wasn't to be talked about too much. But I think if my grandmother was still alive, she would talk about it now. Nobody ever asked her in my generation. Finding more about the Perraults and the Indian and the African American and all that just opened up a whole nother world.
It heard that I have zero idea if this is true, that she married John and they decided to come to New York. It was thought that Louise was a more Northeastern name. And so they went with Louise. I have no idea if that's true.
3 different names, and one was Lola and one was Louise. Louise was, it was like a French name.
My name is Dennis Donnelly. I'm the son of Alphonse Donnelly, and Lola was my grandmother. It was my father's mother. Her background was pretty vague, to us grandchildren. We never realized that she was part Indian. We always had the thing where she was French. We didn't find out, till in our 40s that Lola was a Native American. The Perraults weren't really a topic that was brought up for any one reason. Our own children didn't know not much about our life. Why didn't we know that earlier?
She would love the family, okay, and the background, and okay with where she ended up. But the process in between, she might not want to go into all the details. My mother, her daughter, figured out how to get along a lot, move the pieces around, to make them fit. You don't want to give your secrets away so people aren't wise to you later on. So I would think she would probably be thinking that way. Let's not see how the sausage was made.
You probably wouldn't be happy about it. Nope. Not the way she clammed up. You let the cat out of the bag and that's taboo.
She might have wanted to kept it buried, because it was buried for so long. It's not really fair to the rest of the people in the family not knowing what their actual heritage is.
Whoever Lola was in Louisiana, I still am today. Whatever the truth is, I want it. As I've worked through this story and kind of started the journey, I wondered, why not just go back home? Like, everything's falling apart around you. You're being discriminated against, and you don't have family support, and you kind of don't have a leg to stand on. And I just really didn't understand, why didn't she go back home? And I'm so glad that she didn't, because then I wouldn't be here. But it's something that I wondered.
I was too happy. You said, leave it up to me. I'll take all of your happiness and throw it right into the sea. I'll leave you with a gaping hole, leave you with memories. I'll bury your happy fathoms deep, and you'll sink just like...
My father passed. We had no help, and my mother had to go out and work and support 8 kids. My grandfather, my father's father, okay, he owned boarding houses and pubs. So he had made money, but no help. He did not like his children didn't marry Irish. First time I knew that I was part Indian, we were in his house. I think my mother was going there trying to get some money to bury my father. That didn't happen. He poked his head out around the corner and he said, make sure those little Indians stay in their place. And I looked at my oldest sister, Maggie, and I was like, what's that?
I was told by my mother that my grandfather, who was John Donnelly, that his family was 100% Irish and totally against him marrying Lola, and that they rejected her because she was too ethnic. I didn't find that out till maybe 2-3 years ago, that there was ever kind of a rejection from the family, because I had asked my mother, well, here, Grandma's with 8 children. Where's the rest of the family on the other side when he died to help you? And she said, oh, they had nothing to do with us. I think the family's going to come in and help somehow. And no, she had absolutely no help from anybody.
My mother's experience growing up, there's 2 things going on. Number one is you're getting along, right? And what do you also have available to you? Not typical things that you would find in the South, you would find in Albany, New York. But then the effect of poverty. My mother would say they were hungry. They were starving. They would raid people's gardens to get food. She said she would never have cabbage soup again because that really is just a thing of water with the cabbage leaf in it. You know, she loved the tail of the chicken. I didn't even know you ate that. It's gross. It's just cartilage and fat, and yeah, it's gross. My mother's phrase was, you know, with the cow, you ate everything but the moo, and with the pig, you ate everything but the oink, because they didn't have anything. So I would think that that would have a lot of effect on what Lola would be able to share with her family. You know, desperate times, desperate measures. You know, whatever is available is what you're eating.
And so my mother's brothers and sisters, they all dropped out of school very young and went to work. Katie was one of the older sisters. My mother was one of the younger ones. And she told me that Aunt Katie works in Albany, and Aunt Katie would distract people. She would let Grammy, my mother, Marion, steal stuff. They didn't have food. And my mother never told me about that until, I'm going to say, a couple of years ago. I felt sad that it was that bad, that they had no help, that they had to really rely on themselves.
When my dad passed away, I think I was 5 years old, or probably 6 years old. We didn't have any toys because we were very poor people, so we didn't have any toys. Had no toys.
I remember these people would come up with a horse and, you know, would dress you up with a cowboy hat on, take your picture, and then try to sell the picture to the adult in the family. And first time this woman come out and said to the guy that had the horse and stuff like that, he said, "Don't bother with them kids, they're poor." And I was like, what the hell is that? And I had to find out what poor was. And we were poor.
You know, once I found out about Lola being of Indian descent, things started to make more sense to me. I'm not saying that she was ashamed of it. I think she was shunned for it. So she just said, "Hey, I'm going to keep it to myself. You could let people think what they want."
Did you ever say anything about what it was like growing up in Louisiana?
No, she never did. Never told us anything about Louisiana.
So is that where she met your father?
Yes, she met my father. My father was working as an engineer on airplanes. They sent him down to work on an airplane that was down there. And so he went down there, stayed at a place that was close to my mother's house, and he met my mother there. So that they started dating, and he married her and brought her back to Troy, New York, which she hated. My brother Jack was born in Louisiana.
So not only did she leave, she left, went to New York, her husband died, she's in a crappy spot, and came back down to visit multiple times, and still came back to New York after all of that. She had every opportunity to stay.
I feel like you'd have more opportunity to go back home.
Yeah, she was rejected by her husband's family.
I would think about the decision that she made to leave with John. Sometimes when we make a decision to leave, and she had a relationship and a loving relationship with her family at home and things like that. But sometimes you've made a choice and you're like, I think I have to follow it through. And if there's a path through, then that's the path I'm on. I'm following it.
Why did she make that decision to not go back? Or why did she make the decision to come? That family was not accepting of Lola and the children because they weren't white Irish or something. I don't know. And so they weren't supportive of them when the father, her husband, passed away. So you would think that if she didn't have any family around here and her, in-laws were not supportive of her, that she would go back to where her roots were, but she didn't. So there must have been something here that was appealing to her that seemed, this is a better place for me and my children to stay, even though I don't think that they were financially in a good place. She made it work, and the kids all grew up and they did great. So whatever she did, kudos to her because she pulled it off.
And I would consider the legacy that Lola has to be very successful in all of us, And so I would love to see the kind of grit and determination, even if it was ugly and messy. I would love to see that story unfold.
I don't know exactly what my grandmother would think about me starting this journey in earnest. She was always a little bit reticent to talk about this stuff, but I don't know if it was from a place of hiding things herself or if it was from a place of just not really knowing. I'm curious about the stories in the rest of my family. So I know how I was raised, and I know like what my mom was told. What about if there's family still in Louisiana? I feel like all of these people could like kind of fill in the gaps of knowledge, because I think a lot of the knowledge that we have is wrong.
My Grammy Marion said that her mom would never go in the sun, like just would not go in the sun.
My mother either. Never. No way. She was very protective of going into the sun. So, you know, they knew.
So unto me the things unseen, faith like a grain of mustard.
My mother had an album with all her relations down south, you know, and some of them were dark skinned. And I'd ask her about it, and she never would answer me. Persons of color, they got hung in a tree. My sister Marion always insisted saying that she was French, you know. My mother was part African and part Indian.
Anything that could be a perceived weakness, people try to hide.
I don't think I'd hide that.
No, I think it's a Donnelly perspective.
Oh.
You know, I mean, just fill in the blank with whatever you feel uncomfortable with.
Oh, Marion did that, you know. Well, she was just following in her mother's footsteps, you know. In other words, if she got by with it all this time, then I will.
This didn't come out until my sister did like a family tree thing. I was at a golf outing with them. I was up in Albany, and we're having the lunch or whatever, the catered lunch. And I did my DNA. I'm 10% black. She goes, and she screams out in the place, "We're black!" I lost it.
And that my mother, she never wanted to be associated that she was actually part black.
Mulatto?
No.
I don't know. I know part black is mulatto.
I know. Something else.
Creole?
Like Creole.
Is that a thing?
That is something. She'd never be associated with she would be part Creole, but she was part Creole.
I won't be happy on the sea axis. I won't be happy on the Z axis. I won't be happy on the Z
Is Audrey Lee Perrault. I grew up in Monroe. I wanted to go to Campty because somebody had passed away and I wanted to go with them. They were going. He says, no, he said, you can never go. Don't you ever go there. I will not allow you to go there. Nothing was ever told why and all. And so growing up, in the back of my mind, I'm going to Campty. I want to find out why I can't go. And so years later, as I got older, I did. I went, you know, just to see. You know, I didn't see anything because I didn't know what I was looking for then.
You provided for me from seed to tree. My faith now can be shaken.
I grew up in Campty. It was extremely hard. We were discriminated against. Back in the day, whenever I grew up, the schools in Campty, the old high schools still stand in Campty, but it's been closed down for years. People of color, Black, Native American, Hispanic, any people of color were not allowed to go to school with the little white children up until the 60s. And then that changed. And it was up until then, we were not allowed to go to school with the little white children. We were taught mainly by the Catholic nuns. We didn't have school buses like they have this day and time. We had an old pickup truck with a homemade bed built on it. In the back of that old truck, the boys would, the girls get to ride in the front. Travel down Campty Bayou Road all the way to Black Lake. Well, that's a dirt road. In the summertime, when it's hot and dry, you get in the back of this truck with this old homemade bed on it. Running down that road, it forms a suction and pull that dust right back up in there where you're sitting. And when you get to school, your hair is white, the brows are white. Your shirt, you do this right here. Yeah, and go on about your business.
It was hard on them, so they either tried to keep it hush-hush, and some were lighter skinned, and some so the ones with lighter skin could get jobs, and also the parents didn't want them to talk about where they came from. But it was, they just all got treated different. And like Audrey told me that Papa's told her never to carry Audrey when she was little, never carry her down to Natchitoches. I think it's probably from his experience down there. And I asked a lot of them because so many of them migrated to Columbia, which is about 30 miles from here, to Louisiana, to Monroe, Schwartz, and Bastrop, and Oak Grove.
They were mistreated. I think things were said. They weren't treated like Chris said as equals, in that aspect. It could have been the birth certificate, because I know some of my brothers had a problem with that. When the birth certificates were viewed on the race that had Black, and it bothered them very much so. And one of them went and had it changed. He had to go through some legal terms, but he had it changed and all. So that could have been it, because back then they were either other or Black, because most of the midwives, when they go in, they wouldn't know the colors because some of the people were darker than others. Mulatto was a lot down here, and it was a mixture of races together, because it was just like New Orleans is a melting pot.
This is what took to get his birth certificate, was when we're running the business, and they're like, yeah, and we need their birth certificates too. And I was like, do we have Dad's birth certificate? And we had to order it from the county. So I remember getting a copy of it going like, oh my God. I was like, this is colored. That's not, 15-year-old me went, that's not even a thing. Like, what was that?
My name is Robert Caldwell, and I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Apache community of Ebarb. Indio being native at that time within that system was a low rank, kind of black-white binary of the U.S. South. And so to be darker meant to be closer to Black or African. There are stories in my family where the brown paper bag test was applied. I've mostly heard that from Creole of color communities around Natchitoches, but it also happened in Sabine Parish, where even within the same family, some people had to sit in the balcony in the movie theaters, which is the colored section, and the others were allowed to go to the white section. And so there are a lot of stories in my family about fear of being placed as Black in a sort of de facto category, not having the rights that white people have. I heard my grandmother tell me that when she was young, her own family members would tell her, don't play in the sun too long. If you play in the sun too long, you'll get too dark. You know, you're already very dark. So that was very real.
He was actually born in California. I mean, he grew up in California. He had black in him and Chinese and French and all the same kind of bunch of mixture. And he said he was older than me, and he said he used to go to Natchitoches in the summertime, spend with his grandfather down there. And he walked to the movie theater. And back then, because it was that way in Monroe when I was a kid, black people had to sit upstairs above. It was a different entrance. Even still downtown, one of those theaters in Western Road. I tell my kids and everybody, you know, this was the theater I went to for 50 cents when I was a kid. But I said, you see this extra little doorway over here, and it's real skinny. Well, when you walked in the regular doors and where you bought your tickets, you can still tell the little skinny door, it's the back side of that ticket booth. And that's where the black people had to go up there. It wasn't that way in California. He said he sitting there watching the movie by himself. He was about 10, and he said he kept hearing people talk, and he looks black, but had green eyes, and his last name's Hongo, because that's the part of the Chinese. And so he kept hearing noise, and he said he turned around and he kept looking, and he finally looked up there, and he seen black people sitting up there, and he said he looked around down where he was at, see no way. He said he started getting nervous, going, oh, I'm going to go to jail, you know, and he said he slumped down in the seat, and he said, I was scared to death. And so he said when he left the theater and he started walking home, he said, I was afraid the cops were going to kill me. And here comes a cop down the road. It was just a coincidence, but being a kid. And he actually cut through a yard and came out on another block. When he came on another block, here comes a car again. And they weren't hunting him, but he said, they might as well have grabbed me because I felt like I was done.
She was just hiding it. She didn't want to be associated with it. I guess, you know, when you're in the South and you're part black, you ain't got it easy, dude.
Grandma White never alluded to anything about her ancestry at all, really, other than she wanted to make sure that I knew that it was French.
The whole thing about it is, and as I was growing up, a lot of things I seen that didn't make any sense. And when I would ask my mother about it, she was like, wouldn't answer me, you know. Picture of her and my father when they got married. And if you look at the wedding dress, you can see decorations of it from Indian heritage, you know. And when you look at the way the belt is around her waist, you know, it's different things like that, you know. And when I try to ask her questions and things like that, she used to always say, I'm French, you know. Never saying that she was of any color because they were afraid. They were afraid. Even coming in, up into New York, my mother was still afraid.
A particular guy, his name was Ozan Desider. There's a lot of Desiders. I went to school with some Desiders. Probably this guy was their great-grandfather or something of that nature. Ozan Desider tried to purchase his property. The government tried to send agents down, and Desider would not sell his property. Probably they didn't offer him very much for it. Even whatever they offered for it, he did not want to sell. So in return, they came back later on at a different time, at night time. That time, you know, they used torches. They didn't have flashlights and electricity. They called him out to come out on his front porch, and they said, come help us. There's a guy down the road they needed help with. So he believed what they were telling him. He said, hang on, let me light my torch. So he went in the house, lit his torch by the fireplace, and came back out on the front porch. The torch put him as a target in the dark. So they shot him down on his front porch and killed him mainly because he would not sell his land. They feared that that same thing would happen to them. If they didn't sell their land, that they would be killed. So they denied being Native American so that they could stay there. They went into hiding in plain sight.
You provided for me from sea to tree. faith now can't be shaken.
I came down here and I was hoping that coming down here would be like the end of the journey. Like this would be like bringing the closure, but I think it's actually like the beginning of the journey.
Did she ever talk about Louisiana to you?
No, she never did, and we never saw any people that lived. Even though she did write to people, maybe a letter a year she would get a brother or her sister. I think the one brother was Alfred, Albert. She grew up in Bastrop, Louisiana.
I gave it all I had to see this through, but I won't be coming back to you.
My name is Joseph Blaze Perrault Sr., and I was born in Bastrop, Louisiana.
What's your father's name?
Albert Benjamin Perrault. The thing that comes to my mind is smoking that pipe, and always with that pipe in his mouth. And playing games, he played to win. He was competitive. He played to win.
He looked like.
Well, he looks a lot like me. Yeah, he was a little on the dark complected side and had high cheekbones, and his heritage was probably, because the name was some French and probably some Indian because it looked like he had Indian.
Did he ever mention his sister Lola?
Yes, she had moved away.
I heard her talk about her sister Lola, but she wasn't talking to me about it. She was talking to her sister Zola about their sister, And when she'd go to Uncle Albert's house, they would talk about their sister. I think Aunt Lola would write to my grandmother. Now, my grandmother never learned how to read, so I would hear my aunt reading letters to her. But yeah, she did speak of her and wish she could see her.
Grandma White never wanted to go back. She wanted to, move on, and she went completely east from Louisiana, and I think just never looked back.
I think they were disconnected for so many years. Once Lola left Louisiana, she didn't drive, so it wasn't like if she ever got a car, it was go to Louisiana. She had 8 kids. She couldn't go too much further than go out and work. Kids.
It's like, did you guys talk about your ethnicity, your ancestors, your background? Like, what was your experience with that? Was that a conversation ever came up, or?
It never came up. They spoke French, but the French that I thought they were speaking was the French that I took in high school. Totally different. Totally different. They spoke the Cajun French. They said their prayers in French. Very Catholic, in the household. When they didn't want the kids to know anything about what they were saying, they spoke in French. I would listen to them if they talked about family and things, but I never really knew until I got older and started researching myself,
So how did you start
I want to know more about who I was. Where did I come from? Who are these people? And I always heard, we're French and Indian. That's it.
No, he never mentioned anything about his heritage. I still don't know what we did the Ancestry.com DNA, but it didn't reveal anything that was of any interest to me.
I think I started this journey kind of from pretty impersonal position. I was on Ancestry.com till 2:00 in the morning, trying to build this family tree and learning all these names and these locations, and everything was just new because we didn't know anything about this side of our family. But as I've started this journey and started talking to people and talking to family members and meeting people and hearing stories about who Lola was, it's kind of changed my perspective.
My daughter and I decided we were going to do Ancestry.com, and I did it one time and I couldn't stop. night, and all of a sudden it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was still going, oh, here, we got to find this, my cousin Chris, and Chris had been doing it too. I mean, we just all went crazy. And I really had to stop because I was obsessed.
I never talked to him about it, accepted who we were, let it go at that. It was nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah.
He accepted who he was, and he was happy in that skin. Just accept who you are and be content in that. You can't change it, so accept it and be content in that.
Like some part of me wants to like hold on really tight to this because we almost didn't know anything about it. But I don't really know what that means. Like, I guess that's okay to not know. And that's kind of up to each person to decide what they do with it, right?
I wish that if I could go back and talk to her, I would say be proud of who you are. As this is a different generation. We would say be proud of who you are. Never be ashamed of who you are. Back in those days, you're talking the 1940s and 30s and 20s, and there was a lot of racism. They learned to survive in a time when most people probably would have collapsed and given up on life. But they were all survivors, every single one of them. And they never let life take them into a dark place. They always found a way to make it through and to succeed. And they always laughed about it too.
Like other stuff changes, but the water's just here. It's just been here. It's just like the same water. Maybe it's the same trees. I don't know how old that tree is. Maybe it's the same tree. I think the weird thing is that I thought I cared more about like being here and be like, I'm touching the land, I'm touching everything. And I didn't know that there was family here that we could still be connected to. And I think finding family that I actually care about and that we have like this shared experience is actually more important to me. I didn't even think it was there, but now I'm realizing like, that's like the really important part is there's other people who understand your history because it's their history. And that's the part I really want to keep.
Everybody you meet that is related to you, that's an enrichment,
I started getting invited to other family reunions. I was sitting down talking to an elder. I was explaining to him who I am, and he said, I know you. He recounted my whole genealogy, said how I was related to him. I'd never met this man in my life. That moment, it felt totally different. It totally blew me away because I'd spent time on genealogy. I'd spent time trying to better understand my ancestors. I might have lost track of them. I might have not been born to the same community, but they know who I am through my family. That totally changed my feelings about that and questions of belonging, like a lost puppy from the litter or a lost bird or something, right?
Frank Perrault Jr. Incidentally, I'm a junior. I'm named after my dad. Who would you like to be? What would you like to be? I would say, I'm glad you asked me that question. Because I would like to be just exactly who I am. Be proud of your heritage. Ambition, motivation, and self-esteem. A person has got those three things. You can fight and you can win any battle that you come across. You're almost unstoppable.
So in my mind, I don't see being white passing as the goal. I think being white passing was the vehicle to get her to the life that she wanted, not as a white person, but as a human being who was ready to move on from something that had become impossible to live with. So I would consider my grandmother, Marion, to be somebody who doesn't give up, has always continued on to figure it out, to make something of herself, be where she wants to be and live life on terms that she sees fit to live. And there's a boldness to that clearly she got from her own mother, but it's there and it's in me.
My eyes have to adjust. Is it on? I came down here and I was hoping that coming down here would be like the end of the journey. Like this would be like bringing the closure, but I think it's actually like the beginning of the journey. Like Lola left from here and she like blazed her own trail and like did her own thing. And not everybody was in agreement with what it was, but that's okay. And I don't know. So that's what I was just thinking. Maybe this is like coming here is not like I come here and now it's all tied up neatly. It's like I come here and now things make more sense. Now I can move forward in a direction like I want to move forward in, like whatever that looks like. But I think that I'm on the right path.